Welcome everybody to the Depths of Motherhood podcast. This is a special season dedicated to the tribe of the mother, but also I know any mothers listening will find this extremely valuable. I've created each episode to offer simple, digestible, and supportive information, which I hope will educate and inspire anyone who listens. So this is by popular demand. Please help us to educate and support the tribe holding the mother. Look forward to passionate and highly knowledgeable guests dedicated to reclaiming the essence of birth and embracing conscious parenting. Throughout our time together, our guests will serve as the guiding voices, illuminating the path towards a deeper understanding of preconception, pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. This is with the mother and the baby being the center of the exploration. In the show notes, you'll discover the link to Nourished Mother package, which will offer many different resources to complement each episode. This is free for all members in the Women's Circle, or £33 for everybody who just wants to purchase the package. A heartfelt thank you to our incredible guests and immense gratitude to my partner for supporting me on this creation. And finally, last but not least, special thank you to Araya, my daughter, for being the endless well of inspiration. Welcome everybody. This week, Dana joins us on the show. Dana is the host of Wombology podcast, and her podcast is really bringing forward so much education on the female body. So she's talking about ways to tune in, to understand the language of the body, understand the physiological effects during our menstrual cycle, and how things like nutrition, movement, hidden wounds, environment, how all this can affect our experience as a woman. And more specifically, Dana focuses on how to support women transition from being on hormonal birth control to not being on hormonal birth control, and finding ways to gently get to know the body again, to understand the menstrual cycle, and to nourish her and replenish her after periods with hormonal contraception pumping through our blood. I've known Dana for a few years now, and I love learning with her. I love seeing her journey as she really brings forward her own personal experience, which she shares a lot of on her Instagram. And she's really showing up for her community. She's listening to what the women are going through, what the women are asking for, and she's finding incredible guests to join her on her podcast to reveal information that can really support us on our journey. Dana also has a membership where she's supporting women to get back in tune with their cycle, and also she has a course called Fertile and Free, and this is to support women who are wanting to come off of hormonal contraception. So in this conversation, we're getting some really top tips on ways to really hold space for what is arising, because as we remove this synthetic hormone from our body, all layers of us is starting to adapt to this removal. And so by understanding what is happening physiologically, and also welcoming practices to help us to stay with everything that arises, so that we can love it all the way through without pushing anything away. So a massive thank you to Dana for sitting with us and for all the work that she's doing. Before we start, let's just take a deep breath and guide it into our womb space, and taking some gentle movements through the body so that we can start to feel our muscles gently resting on our bones, and feeling that movement, that fluid movement move through our body as we soften to tune in to receive this conversation. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome, Dana.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you for having me.
I don't remember the last time we spoke, but I think it was on your podcast, right? Yes.
Yeah,
Properly.
maybe. Yeah.
I'm going to put that episode up too. I'm going to put it through mine because you sent me the recording. So I'm going to put it up. Now I'm back on my feet and have some kind of plan with this podcast. So Let's talk about you. You have a podcast. Let's talk about that for a moment.
I do, yes. So my podcast is called the Wombology Podcast, and your episode actually with talking about how to host a women's circle is still one of the most popular episodes.
Woo woo.
So it's just such a testament to how many women are like wanting to hold circle and like understand the importance of that. So
Mm.
love that. But yeah, the Wombology podcast really dives into the science and the sacred, the science and the spiritual of women's holistic healing. So I've had such a range of different guests and different topics. And a lot of it is guided by like things that I hear from my community on my Instagram at womb.ology around what are they struggling with in terms of whether it's like trauma from miscarriage or birth, or whether it's trying to heal their thyroid hormones, or whether it's preparing to come off of birth control. And then we've had some other interesting topics like how I did a panel episode on how religion, like the dogma of religion, has impacted our relationship with our wombs. And I had four different women from four different religious backgrounds, including myself, to kind of have this panel discussion on like how our different religions influenced our relationship with our wombs and our bodies. And that's one of the most popular episodes as well.
That's a great
So
episode.
yeah,
I listened to that. Loved it.
oh,
So
thank
good.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
when I
so
first met you,
that's it.
I was like a fangirl because I've been listening to your podcast too. So that feeling where you've been watching and listening to someone for so long, and then you finally get to
Yeah,
meet them and you realize, wow, they're human beings.
they're just like me.
Exactly. When people
Yes.
talk to me, I'm like, hey, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, I know I have a podcast and I
Yeah,
have some stuff online, but I actually do not really know what I'm doing most of the time. I'm just going flowing with
same.
inspiration.
Yes, same. Yeah, I don't think anyone does. And that's the beauty of like tuning into your womb and living in alignment with your womb. Like you're just flowing and creating beautiful, beautiful
Mm.
art.
And you are the one that I go to online to remind me, hey, check in with your cycle. Because even though I talk
Mm,
about it a lot and it's a big part of my life, as soon as them hormones come in, it's very easy to like
hmm.
get swept away from just swept along the journey of like, well, okay, hormones are telling me that one thing, my mind's telling me another thing, and what should I do? And it's just like this whirlwind of things happening inside my little world. So I'd love for you to share how you got to this point, because I know that this came, well, you tell your story and guide it into why you feel that um, having support transitioning from hormonal contraception, if that's what a woman's choosing to do, to the national the natural hormonal rhythm, the natural the natural hormonal rhythm.
Sponsored by the FDA.
Put that in there. Everyone go into the notes, you'll see it. Sponsor it. So how can we understand that from your own personal experience flowing into supporting women through this transition, big transition? Poof.
Yeah, yeah. Well, funny enough, my journey started from a place of burnout in terms of I was the type of person who was like an overachiever, perfectionist. I was reading all the productivity books and like following all the productivity hackers and just running myself into the ground, to the point where I was having these really intense back spasms and like chronic bloating, fatigue, brain fog. And I didn't really connect the dots that these symptoms. I also was on birth control for 10 years. Let me say that first, because that's super important. I was on all different kinds of birth control pills because I was experiencing symptoms like depression and anxiety, and kept trying to, just switch the pill thinking that that would solve the problem, but then the problems never go away. And then I had an IUD for 3 years. And yeah, I wasn't connecting the dots between my symptoms and the birth control, because when you go to a doctor, they're not going to say, oh, yeah, it's the birth control. Like, if anything, they're going to be like, oh, we just need to put you on more pills, more kinds of medications. Um, and I also was vegetarian and then vegan for a total of 7 years, not realizing how that was totally depleting my body of the resources that it needed to thrive. And so I'm just a mess and I'm falling apart and I'm not understanding because I'm like, but I'm so healthy because I'm a vegan. And I'm like, yeah, like I'm doing everything right. I also was doing these intense hour-long HIIT workouts every single day on an empty stomach. So I was intermittent fasting. Pretty much like every hormone no, like every hormone disaster I was doing, but not realizing that that's what I was doing. I thought I was being healthy. But the thing that woke me up was I looked around and realized that all these productivity gurus I was following were men. Like, if you really think about it, these people like James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, and I can't even think of the other ones right now, but the people I was following, I'm like, wait, like, that's interesting. Why are they all men? And they're all telling me to like do the same exact thing every single day and like follow this very linear structure that was not working for me at all. And I was completely burnt out, exhausted. My body was falling apart. And then finally, someday I came across someone talking about how our female bodies operate differently and how we have these four very unique hormonal shifts that not only impact our reproductive organs, but our brain as an organ too. Like our brain is a cycling organ, and our neurochemistry literally changes with these phases as well, and how we have different strengths in each phase and different ways that we need to be taking care of our bodies and living in alignment with this cycle that we go through. And that will help us to be more productive, to have more energy, to have less stress, to have less period problems. And then I go down the rabbit hole and start learning, oh, about the consequences of birth control on your body. And then I go further down the rabbit hole and I realize, oh, vegan isn't the best diet for female physiology. And all the pieces start coming together, and I start living in alignment with my cycle. I start incorporating animal products again. And I experienced not only the physical changes, like, yes, I started ovulating again. I started getting my period again. I started having cervical mucus, and just like looking, like people could look at me and be like, wow, you look different. Like your face is brighter, your energy is different. All that was great, on top of the like spiritual changes, just like healing these things like the father wound, and healing my relationship with productivity and letting go of that like overachiever perfectionist thing. um, because in our menstrual cycle we have certain times where we can go deeper and become introspective and heal some of these things rather than just like pushing through all the time and moving so fast in life that you're not even like slowing down enough to hear the messages. So, yeah, that's my story.
Beautiful. We have such a similar story. It's very
Mm.
interesting, literally the 10 years and the being a vegan and vegetarian. And I love how you kind of unravel the layers with this of where we're getting to as we come back to our body and we tune into our cycle. And it always gets me so emotional. And I probably think that emotion is from a grief of not being connected to my cycle for so long. And then on the other side of that is such gratitude for being able to learn and surround myself around people like yourself who are living this, but not in a way. I follow you on social media and I know you share the struggles as well, the challenges of coming back to your body, because that is another thing of not being in the toxic positivity of actually holding space as we come back to ourselves, because it has to rise up, right? All these patterns and habits that we have, all the ideas and beliefs, they have to rise up, and we have to hold space for them so that then we can
Mm-hmm.
come back a little bit deeper. So thank you for sharing
Yes.
that.
Yeah,
So
I want to like riff on that just a little bit because I feel like sometimes on social media, these like methods or tools or whatever that whatever someone's selling, they're selling it as if it's gonna like change, it's gonna like make your whole life beautiful and amazing and everything's happy and positive. Like that is not what I'm selling. Like I I'm not selling you a perfect life. I'm selling a it's like when life inevitably
inevitably,
inevitably my God.
yeah, have some
Definitely.
coffee.
Yeah, right. When life gets shitty,
That's it.
like this is what you come back to. This is
Mm.
a grounding place, practice, rituals to come back to because life is always going to have great things and bad things. There's always the 50-50. It's never going to be perfect. And I would never promise that it's going to be perfect after you do these things. It's just going to be more manageable.
Yeah, and I feel, in this conversation that we're having with transitioning from hormonal contraception, for whether it's the woman who's listening, whether it's for her tribe that's listening to this, I think just noticing at the core of it that there are going to be shifts. That's what's going to happen as you make these changes, as you transition. And the
Mm-hmm.
way that this is expressed might not always be comfortable. So learning how to hold space is huge for this, because it affects everyone in that bubble. So learning
Mm-hmm.
how to be with it in a compassionate way is such a skill. There'll be times when everything just becomes too much and a volcano erupts, and then we slow
Mm-hmm.
down and we come back down and we reflect and we see, okay, what just happened? Because obviously, like, this is new. This is a new part of ourselves that we're getting to know. So slowly, slowly. Well, so for anyone who's listening and they are transitioning from hormonal contraception, what are some of the things that might arise in their human experience after stopping taking a hormonal contraceptive?
Yeah. Yeah. So this can really depend on several different factors, such as what kind of birth control you were on, how long you were on it, your individual biochemistry, how your gut microbiome is, your diet, your lifestyle. But in general, if you're, let's say you're not preparing your body ahead of time, because this is what I teach as well, is like how to prepare your body before you come off birth control so that the transition is not as jarring to your body. But if you were to just quit cold turkey without any kind of preparation, you might experience what Dr. Jolene Brighton calls post-birth control syndrome, which is any of the following symptoms like acne, irregular periods or missing ovulation, missing periods, intense mood swings or depression or anxiety. You might experience hair loss, really heavy, painful periods, headaches, migraines, breast tenderness. So, not super fun. And it might seem like your body is betraying you or like, oh, I should just get back on the pill because this isn't worth it. The pill was like preventing these things from happening. When the truth is, these things were likely happening underneath the surface, and the pill or whatever birth control was just covering that up like a band-aid. And I always use the analogy of if your trash smells, if your garbage can is sitting there and it smells, and you, instead of taking out the trash, you just spray it with some like air freshener, it might get rid of the smell for a little while, but you didn't really solve the root problem, which was that the trash is there and you need to take it out. So actually solving the problem would look like taking the trash out and putting a new bag in. But birth control is like just spraying the trash and like covering up the smell. Um, so your body is actually communicating to you, coming back online, being like, hey, I've been like suffering over here, like all these things are going on, and I'm not getting what I need to be balanced and healthy. So when you listen to what she's asking for and nourish her with what she needs, then these symptoms will go away. She'll get more quiet. Um, and I also want to bring in that some people feel a lot of relief coming off birth control, especially if they had an IUD. I know for me, like having this foreign object in the body that literally triggers an autoimmune response, when it comes out, it's like, oh my God, like so much space, so much openness, so much tension release that I didn't even know I was holding. And also your emotions coming back online in a good way. So like a lot of women feel emotionally numbed out on birth control, where you're just like emotionally flatlined. You don't necessarily experience a lot of joy, you don't necessarily experience a lot of like grief or sadness, but to actually feel that sadness and to cry again and to feel joy again, it's like, oh my God, I'm becoming human again. I'm feeling like it's really beautiful. So,
I love how
and
you brought that in, because I think that was
yeah,
definitely my experience, was a numbing in my
yeah,
emotions. And it's the trip for me. The journey is not exiling or any emotions that arise, but seeing them as part of our human experience. And it's easy to say when I'm like sat here enjoying this time with you, sipping my coffee, like, yes, I'll be here through anger and jealousy and rage. And then when it
yeah,
comes, I'm like, what is this? So
yeah,
so for having 10 years without being able to have a relationship with these energies inside of me, without understanding that language, and now getting to, I think I was 21 when I came off of the pill, and then being like, okay, so how do I take what I'm feeling inside of me, create a bridge to express it in this world in a way that is authentic? So that is completely
Mhm.
my journey, and I feel like it'll be my life journey, because I've
Mhm.
missed so much. And as you're talking, I'm just thinking of how coming off hormonal contraception and having a guide support like yourself, like these episodes, like all the wonderful people who've been writing about this and sharing about this, it actually is this preparation for your body to receive a
Mhm.
soul, to become pregnant, to give birth, to become a mother.
Mm.
It's just like, it's a step that we can take if we fully honor that transition. Because for myself, I didn't know this at the time. I just came off
Mm.
of the pill. I didn't know that all these emotions I was feeling, because for me, it was definitely more emotions than physical differences. But the emotions that came through, I didn't know it had anything to do with the pill, but I just knew that coming off the pill, I felt more alive. Like the world seemed more colorful to me, and I could never give
Yes.
that up. Once I'd seen the world, it was
Mhm.
like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. so
Yes.
so having this time to fully be like, okay, so how can I honor myself through these times as I go through this transition to having the relationship with my body again? And I feel like not just for the people coming off the pill, but for the tribe supporting, of being very aware of what is happening and how to support.
Big shout out to our sponsor, Evolving Humans, who are the pioneers for energy healing. This practice that I was taught 4 years ago has been studied by researchers all around the world to provide evidence of the physiological effects of energy healing. And I'm not just saying this because it's a promotion, but I have used this practice every single day for 4 years, and personally I've noticed the most impact in my emotional state. This energy practice taught me how to feel energy in my body and observe the sensations. The technique involves you using your hand and connecting to the energy field within your body. And with this gentle, loving awareness that you bring to the table, everything is seen and lived. The whole being comes into alignment. During the birth of my daughter, I tore, and the discomfort that I was experiencing with this tear started to ease up dramatically when I would use this technique. In the show notes, you'll find the link to Evolving Humans so that you can explore this healing technique, which is available through a course that you can join today.
How to support. So how would you, what tips would you give for supporting the body to come back to a natural rhythm?
Yeah. So I always recommend, if you can, to give your body like a 3 to 6 month runway before coming off birth control to start incorporating these things and preparing your body. If you already went off, like totally fine, these tips will still apply. But the first step or tip would be to focus on your gut health, because hormonal contraceptives destroy your gut. There is a 300% increased risk of developing Crohn's disease, which is a type of inflammatory bowel disease when you take birth control. And I'm sure a lot of women have experienced chronic yeast infections or bloating or other gut issues while on birth control. This is why. It's because birth control causes inflammation in the digestive tract and leaky gut syndrome. So all of this makes it harder for your body to digest, absorb, and use the nutrients that you get from your food. And the nutrients you get from your food is what your body uses to produce our hormones and our neurotransmitters. So, to some quick tips on healing the gut, I would say avoiding as much as possible these toxic seed oils like sunflower oil, canola oil, vegetable oil, which are in most things, and it's really hard to 100% avoid. But using things instead like tallow or ghee or butter, olive oil, coconut oil. Um, and then organic bone broth is packed with nutrients and collagen needed to seal those leaky gut linings. And then step two would be replenishing your body with nutrients, because hormonal contraceptives deplete your body of nutrients that, again, your body needs to produce your hormones, such as B vitamins and magnesium are the two like really big ones. So I know like we were both saying that we had also been vegan or vegetarian, and this, I think this is so many women's journey as well. So it's like a double whammy of nutrients being depleted from the birth control and not getting enough in general from your diet. So reincorporating bioavailable protein, things that are packed with nutrients like grass-fed beef liver, oysters, pasture-raised eggs, bone broth, raw dairy, collagen.
I'm
And
hungry right
also,
now.
yeah,
I want bone broth right now.
yeah. And also not depriving yourself of carbs, like not all carbs. I mean, I don't even like to label any food as bad, but carbs offer so much. Like they offer our body energy. So fruits, honey, maple syrup, coconut, sweet potatoes, and other root veggies, sourdough. Getting a serving of fat in each meal, like the grass-fed butter, beef tallow, ghee, um, and then some really nutrient-rich herbs such as nettle leaf and red raspberry leaf. Um, and in my membership, the Cyclical Sisterhood, I incorporate a meal plan every single week that has these hormone balancing meals, so you don't even have to like think about all this stuff. And then the third thing is supporting your liver to detoxify all the synthetic hormones that are sitting in our body from the birth control, as well as from all these chemicals that we come into contact with every single day in all the products that we use, like our shampoo, lotion, cleaning products, all these things that contain hundreds and hundreds of chemicals that throw off our body's hormonal balance. So, choosing organic, natural, toxin free products for your body and your home, avoiding candles and air fresheners, and um, also dandelion root tea is really amazing for helping the body to detoxify. And then the last thing is embodying cyclical living. So, like I was mentioning before, our body goes through these 4 hormonal phases. And if you're still on birth control, you're not going to actually experience these 4 different hormonal shifts, but you can still align with the phases of the moon, because the moon goes through about a 29.5-day cycle, as does our bodies. And the different moon phases align with these different hormonal phases that we go through. So there's like, just like in nature, there is a rest period, a winter, a growth period in the spring, a full bloom and thriving phase in the summer, and a slowing down and turning back inwards in the fall. So this is our internal rhythm as well. Um, and it's not easy to do because we live in a man's world. We live in a world that was designed for male bodies that don't go through this cycle. So it really is a radical act to say, no, I am going to rest during my bleed and I'm not going to push through, because that's how it's supposed to be. And yeah, if you want, I can go deeper into like cyclical living, or we can just kind of keep it high level.
If people want to go deeper into it, then they can come and find you. How about that?
Yes. Yeah, like
Because I
that.
know that this is a very deep and interesting topic. So I think what you just
Yes.
shared was really good for giving us an insight of what is actually happening and connecting it to the seasons and nature as well, which is one of
Mm-hmm.
the biggest things I think of coming back to our body, is being guided by nature. Because being on a hormonal contraception for myself, I felt almost like an alien when it came to my relationship with nature. Like I didn't
Mm.
even, I had no connection at all, like apart from I was witnessing it, but I couldn't feel it
Mm-hmm.
inside of me. I didn't have an emotional connection to it that I was aware of anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recommend yoni steaming during these times?
Oh my gosh, yes. I just did a group yoni steam session inside the membership, and it was just such a beautiful experience to do. It's one of my favorite things to recommend. Like, no matter what hormonal issues you're dealing with, like yoni steaming can be so supportive. Yoni steaming is the practice of sitting over a steaming pot of herbs and allowing the medicine from the herbs to infuse and enter your vulva and your pelvic bowl through the steam, and helps with irregular cycles, with cramps, heavy bleeds, infections, can help with healing postpartum, after birth or miscarriage, helps to calm and regulate the nervous system. And it's just this beautiful spiritual practice to connect you to your ancestors. And it's like this ancient tradition that is evidence of doing this has been found all over the world. And just that spiritual practice of reclaiming this ritual, and bringing it back. I love it.
So that you were doing that online, I loved it. We've been trying to get it in
Mm-hmm.
our membership as well, to get everyone together when they're
Yeah.
not bleeding. Making it
Yeah.
down. But you do
I
find,
ended
especially
up,
notice in your membership, people start to like huddle together, who's on their menstrual, who's bleeding or who's ovulating.
yeah, and I ended up because there were some people who were bleeding, and I just told them to just make tea and just like sit with your
Mm.
tea instead and connect with the steam from the tea.
Oh, that's a great idea. That's a really good
Mm-hmm.
idea. So I love everything that you've shared. You've shared about nutrition, you've shared about herbal support, you've talked about yoni steaming.
Mm-hmm.
And we did touch on a little bit earlier about movement and exercise. You
Mm-hmm.
okay? Because I know for me, this was one of Hold on a second. I got a tangled up baby in my booba. Can you sit with me? She's like tangled up between every cable. Whoever's watching the video, you get to see two breasts and one tangled up baby. You are lucky. Because I remember, yeah, I had the same experience of physically, I was pushing myself, just like all the men, because I was in the military. So I was just like pushing, pushing, pushing,
Mhm.
never had a break, doing all of the exercise. And I didn't even, whenever I would do stretching or yoga or like even dance, I would not class that as exercise. I would class that as me being lazy or like it didn't have an effect on my
Yeah.
body or something. I had such a disconnect. So coming back to slowness, coming back to enjoying yoga and just like somatic movement was a big thing for me because I felt a lot of guilt for not doing the marathon. So like doing the
Mhm.
hardcore weight training. So I would love for you to share how we can support ourselves into slowing down, what movements would support us, what exercises.
Mm. Oh, same. I'm so glad you said that because me too. Like I didn't feel like I was really doing anything or really getting a workout if I was not like panting out of breath and dripping in sweat and like having just completed an hour-long workout that was like, the title on YouTube was like burn 1600 calories. Like, oh my gosh. And when I started doing yoga, it felt so, I'm like, this is so slow. And like, I'm not getting anything out of this. This isn't doing anything. That's probably because you're living on stress hormones. Like, your cortisol is so high that, anything that brings you to a normal level seems really too slow. So it is a practice. It is like a mindset shift of, I am caring for my body. This is so important for my body. Um, and so, yeah, for exercise, I would say it depends how depleted you are. And if you are missing your period or missing ovulation, I would say like very little movement to no movement, which sounds crazy to the people who have been like doing intense workouts for probably years and years. And you might be scared that you're gonna gain weight or something. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole of like our mindset around weight and things like that.
Yeah, that was mine for sure. When I was just waiting for you to say it because I was so
Yeah.
afraid of putting on weight. And it's
Yeah.
so interesting because when I slowed down, when I started eating to serve my body, to nourish my body, when I started sleeping, oh my gosh, sleeping,
Yeah.
then my body shifted and the I was actually
Yes.
carrying weight before, but it was water, like it was toxins in my
Yes.
body. So as soon as I started cleansing, my face changed, like my body changed. It was so interesting.
Oh my God. Yes. Like, it's like, I just want to tell all the women, you're not going to believe me, but just trust me that if you slow down and you sleep more and you exercise less, you're not going to gain crazy amounts of weight. Like, don't worry. Um, because your body finally is not in this survival mode where it feels like it has to hold on to the water and the food that you're eating. I experienced that too, like the puffiness, and I felt like I was always bloated, even though I'm like, what the heck? Like, I'm cutting out all this food. I'm like barely eating anything and I'm exercising so hard, and yet I have this like puffiness. Um, yeah, I promise that once you sleep more and incorporate gentle movement, yin yoga, walking, it's going to shift your body. And then, like, I don't even think about my weight anymore. Like, that it's not a topic in my mind of like, oh, I gotta do this to make sure for my weight, whatever. Like, I just live in alignment with my cycle and I just keep my weight. Like, I don't have to think about it, which is such a huge thing when I think about how much I was thinking about it in the past and how much mental energy that took from me. I'm like, wow, look at all this brain space I have now that I'm not constantly thinking about every single thing that I'm eating or everything I'm doing or not doing for my weight.
Yeah, I remember we did a gathering on body dysmorphia, because that was a
Hmm.
huge thing. I mean, this is a massive topic, but it's just come alive in me right
Yeah.
now. I remember I wanted to drive the car 10 hours from my army barracks to home, because I knew, like, I read that I would burn 100 more calories per hour if I drove the car. And that's where my mind was at, like
Yeah.
it's all that it was, all the energy was going to that. So, I mean, not everyone's going to have that experience, but I think it's just very, to put it out there that
Hmm.
me and you have had that experience too, and we can say there's a light on the other side, and there's a way to fall in love with your body just by nourishing it, just by being with it,
Hmm.
and creating, just remembering its language again. I'm really happy
Yeah.
that you shared that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what
So,
about, sorry, go on, keep going, girl.
yeah, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, so if you're really depleted and really trying to restore balance in your body, slowing it down as much as possible, allowing for more rest. But if you are feeling good, if you have a regular period, you're regularly ovulating, you're having cervical mucus, things like that, then in the first half of your cycle, when estrogen is rising, then you can enjoy more of those intense workouts, the running, the HIIT workouts, lifting heavier weights. And then in the second half of your cycle, after you've ovulated, start to slow it back down, lifting lighter, doing more walking, more yoga. And so this will help to keep your cortisol levels balanced so that you're not depleted going into the next cycle.
Thank you for sharing that. So for
Mhm.
anyone who is listening to this and is the supporting tribe of somebody who is coming off of hormonal contraception, or maybe they've come off of it and they're just needing a little bit of support, or maybe they're preparing, what tips would you give to this friend or partner, family member supporting the process? How can they support them emotionally,
Mhm.
or what can they offer them as a drink? I know you've given all them tips, but like, what are some things?
Mhm. Yeah, I love this question. And I have some ideas, but I'm also curious how you would answer since you actually have a partner and I've gone through this whole experience single. But yeah, some ideas. I mean, the people I have dated in this process, I love when they actually take the time to learn this stuff too along with me, and actually like listen to the podcast or watch the workshop with me to learn about the different phases of my cycle so that it's not all on me to explain everything because when I was just learning this stuff, I didn't even know how to explain it either. Like it's all new to me too. So take the burden off of me and like learn with me, as a like bonding experience. And even um, like I think on some period apps, I don't know, I use Kandara to track my cycle, but I think you can share your data like with a partner so that they get notified too, like where you're at in the different phases. And so that way, if they know about how to support you in each phase, then they know where you're at and they can do that. Um, and also, like supporting in, I would say, in the first half of the cycle, I don't know, maybe if you're living with a partner, um, maybe you switch off where like you as the woman in the relationship, and sorry, I'm just speaking in terms of heterosexual relationships right now, but that's just my experience. Maybe you take on the household things like the cleaning and cooking and whatnot, and then when you shift into the second half of the cycle, maybe the other person takes on those duties, when you have less energy. That's just what I've thought in terms of kind of sharing the workload things, and like supporting you in rest during your bleed especially. So yeah, like you like taking on the food shopping, the cooking. And it's also on you as the cycling person to communicate your needs and how you're feeling, because trust me, like if you're dating a man, like he cannot read your mind. Like I think we've all learned this, where because as women, we our brain chemistry, especially in the first half of our cycle, we literally have the brain chemistry to be able to read emotions, like read other people's emotions. And so we can infer how someone is feeling and what they need just based on these subtle, like nonverbal cues. Like we're reading their facial expression, we're reading their tone of voice, and it's all subconscious. Like you don't even realize that you're doing that. But probably if you really tune in and notice in the first half of your cycle, you're like looking at people and you feel like you can read their mind because you're actually picking up on all these subtle cues. But men don't have that. So when we're sitting here, like, thinking, how can he not see that I am like clearly pissed off about this thing, or like how is he not putting it together? Like he's not. You have to spell it out for him and just communicate and let him know where you're at in your cycle if he doesn't know, and what you need. And over time, he'll be able to anticipate your needs if he starts to like pick up on the pattern. But yeah, he's not in your body and he doesn't know. But yeah, I would love to hear from you, like if there was anything that your partner did that you
Well, I
liked.
think thank you for sharing that, by the way. It's super interesting about how we can pick up on these like micro expressions as well, and the energy coming from someone. We can pick up things about them that they might not even know that they're putting out
Yes.
into the world.
Mm-hmm.
When I first came off of the pill, I actually separated from my husband at the time. I think there's many reasons.
Wow.
Well, for one, your senses come back.
Mhm.
You start to smell their pheromones. You start to notice things that you didn't notice before. And if there isn't the knowledge of what's happening, like I didn't know what was happening inside my own body, I don't have to hold space for it. My natural go-to thing, my protective mechanism, is to push away and close down. So I know I did that at the time. And I also know that I saw things that I didn't see before. So I then went on a kind of a lone journey. I had partners, but not anyone that I really let in, if you know what I mean. They was just always at the door, seeing the pretty version of myself, like seeing the front cover, but never really got into it. And then when I met Elon, Araya's dad, he was different. He wouldn't let me close down. He wouldn't let me kind of abuse him emotionally, because I was in relationships, but I wasn't letting people in. So it wasn't fair. So when I gently let him in, there was no way that he knew everything that was happening. He's very empathic. He can tell. He's very good at that. But I, at this time, still didn't know my cycle so well. So we went on a journey together. And not that he was like, please tell me, like, I really want to know. It's just that I was talking about it all the time.
Yeah.
And I was like making my teas, doing my journaling, everything to do with that. So over time, he came to understand that the best way to support me was to understand, to know where I'm at in my cycle. And he's most interested in, when am I ovulating? When am I bleeding? Because one, he knows when it's safe for us to have unprotected sex. And then another time is when, okay, we haven't got a baby, because right now we're not trying. So there's 2 points of what he's really interested in. And now he's offering me a remembrance of, hey, do you want to slow down and rest? Hey, do you want to have some bone broth? Like it's a reminder for me for when I forget. And I think that's the same with our friends. When we're going through stuff in our chat, in our like WhatsApp groups, if somebody is struggling with a situation or feels like, oh, I'm feeling such a heavy feeling, or my mind is not clear, it's messy, I don't know what decision to make, we always ask like, hey, where you are on your cycle. And just that one question is like, it's like, aha, I know where I'm at now. Like, I know what's happening. And then there's some space between making a decision or doing that action or saying them words, it's actually a moment to think of, okay, if I can fully give my body what she needs right now, the next step is going to be easier. So I feel in one sentence, it would be a remembrance for what is happening in the female body just by asking the questions. And also asking, hey, how can I best support you right now? That's one of my favorite questions. How can I best support
Yeah.
you? I love that so
Oh,
much
yeah.
because
Oh,
it just
yeah.
offers
So
us
simple.
the chance to see, well, what do I actually need? Because sometimes I'm just moving through life and I actually haven't asked the question, well, what is it that my body actually needs in this moment? It probably
Mhm.
right now is always asking for sleep. So it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I need to sleep. It makes sense. I'm tired.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yeah, so simple. Like, where are you at in your cycle and how can I support you in that is so beautiful. Speaking of yoni steaming, someone I was dating was actually with me the first time that I ever tried yoni steaming, and I allowed him to sit there and like witness me as I did it. And that was actually such a beautiful experience to have him be a part of it and witness it. And he was like, he's like, I feel like I'm watching a miracle happen right now. Like, this is
Oh,
so amazing. So
that is
that's
like
another one.
you're so vulnerable in that moments and letting someone in to
Mm-hmm.
witness you. That is really beautiful. I had something
Mm-hmm.
similar the other day. It was maybe not as pretty looking, but I had a Raya. She was doing a yoni steam with me with some cooler water. And because we were having such a nice time, she'd set up this little altar in the middle. She'd done this all by herself. But because Elon felt left out, he came in and sat with us too. And that was beautiful. And we were all like holding hands. And I was like, oh my
Oh,
gosh, I couldn't plan this any better. It was so perfect.
I love it.
I also feel
Yes.
like, this conversation, these tips and this knowledge that you've shared, it also gives an opportunity for men to support their women in their life. And this is what's very interesting for me right now is this like the wounded masculine and how can men show up more fully for themselves and for their women. And I feel like this is one of the ways to do that by understanding what is happening on a physiological level and how that kind of affects the life experience, because it's not just in isolation, it
Mm-hmm.
affects everyone around us. And this
Mm-hmm.
transition coming off of this synthetic hormone is a big one. So I'm really grateful that you took this time to sit with us to share what you've learned. And I know you have so much more knowledge in that beautiful head of yours. And I'll put the link to your offerings in the show notes so that everyone can come and find you and learn more from you. And your podcast, come on, you offer so
Yay.
much on that podcast for free as well. That's
Yes.
incredible. Well done.
Thank you so much.
Would you like to
Oh.
share where we can find you, even though it's in the show notes, but just to put out there, what are you offering and where are you hiding online?
Yes. So on Instagram is mostly where I hang out at womb.ology. The podcast, Wombology podcast, you can find on Spotify, Apple, all the places. And then what I am currently offering right now is my monthly membership called the Cyclical Sisterhood. And it is this community, this place to come, especially for if you are on this journey of transitioning off of birth control, or maybe you are already off of birth control and you're just wanting to have more support around how to nourish and care for your body throughout these 4 phases. We have a monthly educational class, which I call a womb school class, where we talk more about this informational, like the knowledge sharing. And then we have a embodiment ceremony where it's more about actually dropping into our bodies, connecting with our wombs, connecting with our intuition through somatic movement. And then there's always a guest workshop. This month, we're having one of my favorite people, Dr. Liliana, to guide a pelvic anatomy and mapping session. And then we have a monthly sisterhood circle, so a full moon circle that is more for story sharing and ritual. And yeah, and then the meal plans, the weekly meal prep guide, so that you have healthy hormone balancing meals, and a community space to just come when you have questions, or even something that you want to celebrate, or something that you want to share about your journey. So yeah, I would love to. And I know Danielle already has an amazing membership as well that I have also been involved in, and I love it so much. But yeah, if you're like in America and wanting those American time zones, then I'm here too.
I want to celebrate you and what you have created and the space. It's amazing, and I'm really, really happy for you. Really, it's incredible.
Thank you so much. And you've been such an inspiration, like on this journey too. So thank you.